Gun Interactive has a nasty habit of bringing our favorite horror icons to life, only to watch them die a second, more permanent death. They captured lightning in a bottle with Friday the 13th, but a lawsuit completely snuffed it out. They delivered a brutally authentic Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then just walked away. Now they've set their sights on Michael Myers. The question is Gun's new Halloween game destined to be another ghost in their graveyard of abandoned projects, or have they finally learned from their fatal mistakes? For fans of asymmetrical horror, the name Gun Interactive brings both a rush of excitement and a familiar pit in your stomach. On one hand, few studios truly understand what makes these horror franchises tick. As their own CEO put it, they are horror nerds through and through. They go far beyond slapping a name on a box, they resurrect the very soul of these films, bottling that pure terror and letting us live inside it. From the baking dread of rural Texas to the moonlit woods of Camp Crystal Lake, their passion is undeniable. On the other hand, that passion is matched by a seriously troubling pattern of brilliant, beloved games meeting grisly, premature ends. For players who have poured their time and money into these worlds, the name Gun Interactive is starting to feel like a bad omen. It's a promise of an authentic horror experience, followed by the all-too-familiar sting of abandonment. Today, we're digging into the graves of Gun's previous games. We're going to examine both Friday the 13th, the game, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to figure out what went so horribly wrong. By identifying the cause of death of these previous games, we can try to answer the one question on every horror fan's mind: can their new Halloween game survive its own history? Also, a quick note, while this won't be a video comparing what we know of Halloween to Dead by Daylight, I can say with strong belief that many current Dead by Daylight players would love something else to play right now. Before we dive in, I want to take this opportunity to thank our fantastic channel members for helping me support my local animal shelters. Thank you so much to our Tier 1 members Polo and Jabe Reynolds, as well as our very first Tier 2 member, Kelnack. When Friday the 13th, the game, launched in 2017, it felt like a genuinely new experience, not like anything we'd seen before in the ASIM world. Developed by IllFonic and published by Gun, the project was a true love letter to the franchise. For the first time, you could feel the genuine terror of being hunted by Jason Voorhees, or even better, slip on the hockey mask yourself. It was an instant hit, a raw, sometimes buggy, but always thrilling experience that perfectly captured the chaotic energy of the movies. The community was passionate and dedicated, and it really seemed like the game had a long life ahead of it. But then, the ghost of a decades-old legal battle came back to haunt it. A complicated ownership dispute over the original film erupted between its writer, Victor Miller, and director, Sean Cunningham. The lawsuit itself had nothing to do with the game, but the game got caught in the crossfire. As the legal fight dragged on, a devastating court order was issued, freezing all further development. No new content, no new maps, no new Jasons, the game was dead in the water. What made this so tragic was how much the game got right. Players loved the cat and mouse chase, the desperate scramble to find car keys or fix a phone line, and the sheer number of ways a match could play out. It perfectly replicated the feel of the films, where teamwork could lead to a dramatic escape, but one wrong move meant a gruesome end. The game was a story generator, creating those unforgettable moments of hiding under a bed while Jason breaks down the door, or making a last-ditch sprint to safety. It was this thrilling, authentic core that the community fell in love with, a passion that made its eventual demise all the more painful. Personally, the mechanic I'd love to see reused in the Halloween game is the randomized killer player. The fact that Jason was randomized in Friday the 13th really helped ease that community divide we see so often in asymmetrical games. The loss of Friday the 13th still stings, but its spirit gives us a glimpse of what to hope for Halloween. With Gun once again partnering with IllFonic, the original developers, there's a real chance they can recapture that lightning in a bottle. We can only hope for that same deep love for the source material, bringing Haddonfield to life with the same chaotic energy and fan-focused detail. The inclusion of offline bots is also a clear sign that they've learned from the server shutdowns of the past, offering a safety net that Friday the 13th never had. It's an acknowledgement of the first ghost in their graveyard, and a promise to give Michael Myers a permanence that Jason was cruelly denied. Trying to learn from the sting of Friday the 13th, Gun seemed determined to get their next project right. In August 2023, they unleashed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was a masterpiece in atmospheric horror. Developed with Sumo Nottingham, the game was a shockingly authentic recreation of the 1974 film. It was gritty, terrifying, and it innovated on the asymmetrical formula with its 3 versus 4 gameplay. The attention to detail was pretty incredible, made possible by working directly with Kim Henkel, one of the original creators. It looked like Gunn had another massive hit. This time, however, the rot came from within. The first signs of trouble started with the game's monetization, as players criticized what they felt were aggressive prices for DLC characters and cosmetics. While that created friction, the events of 2024 really sealed the game's fate. In February, the developer Sumo Nottingham announced they were leaving the project to work on something else. Gun Interactive told fans there was nothing to be scared of, and that a new developer, Black Tower Studios, would be taking over. That transition, however, felt like the beginning of the end. Player trust started to curdle as the updates slowed and persistent bugs were left unfixed. The player base shrank. Then, in May 2025, Gunn dropped the bombshell. All future content for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was cancelled. No more DLC, no more balance updates, and no more bug fixes. Gunn claimed they felt the game had been fully realized, and had reached its quote-unquote natural creative end. With the players still sticking around, this rang hollow. It sounded like a corporate excuse for pulling the plug on a game that wasn't even 2 years old. This time, there was no lawsuit to blame. This was a choice. Gunn had seemingly decided that supporting the game wasn't profitable enough anymore, so they abandoned it, leaving another community of dedicated fans in the dust. This created the second, and arguably more dangerous, ghost in Gunn's graveyard. The ghost of abandoned support, a willingness to walk away from a game the second it stops being a huge moneymaker. And like with the previous chapter, the biggest thing I'd love to see make it from Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Halloween is the fantastic use of atmosphere that TCM had. While the gameplay was a mess after the meta was figured out, the art direction was fantastic. I would love to see that same attention to detail in Haddonfield. And that timeline brings us to Halloween. Set for release in 2026, Gunn is teaming up again with IllFonic, the original developers of Friday the 13th. They're taking us to the iconic town of Haddonfield, and promising an asymmetrical horror sandbox on Unreal Engine 5, where we can stalk as Michael Myers or fight back as the town's residents. The announcement even boasts a single-player story mode with offline bot support, a feature that feels like a semi-direct answer to the server shutdowns of the past. If there's a chance your game is going to get shut down, it's slightly better that you can still play it by yourself, right? On the surface, it all sounds pretty good, but what can we expect the game to actually feel like? Since it's being made by IllFonic, it's fair to assume it'll share some of the same DNA with Friday the 13th. We can likely expect the same desperate, objective-based gameplay, a frantic search for tools and objectives while being stalked by an unstoppable force. It's the kind of emergent, story-generating chaos that made their first game so memorable. The key differences here is the sandbox element. Instead of just camp counselors, players will be residents of Haddonfield, and the developers have mentioned that NPCs will populate the town, creating a more dynamic and lifelike environment. This suggests a deeper level of strategy. Notably, however, the Steam page does mention the residents finding weapons, so I'm strongly hoping they don't allow the residents to bully Michael, similar to TCM. However, like I said, this game is made by the original Friday the 13th development team, not TCM's team, so there is hope. For Michael's gameplay, we seem to be looking at more than just hunting players. It seems to be about methodically cutting off communication and spreading terror through the entire neighborhood. This focus on stealth, atmosphere, and a living world could be the perfect evolution of the formula IllFonic established years ago. One more game mechanic that I'm pretty excited about is Michael's ability to turn invisible and traverse the map. This really embraces what he felt like in the movies. It makes the survivors, or the residents, feel like Michael's always there, always watching and planning. And it also kind of reminds me of the Predator mode from last year, the horror ASIM game about hunting monsters in a high school. I'm really hoping the gameplay will be solid. I think it'll give us a new feeling from other ASIMs, with the neighborhood being populated by NPCs as well as the players. I do really hope that they stick to stealth and planning as core mechanics, not rushing down either side. But in this video, we also have to ask some tough questions. Let's look at the two ghosts haunting Gun Interactive and see how they might come for Michael Myers. First, the ghost of legal issues. The Halloween franchise rights are famously complicated, split between different parties like Trancas International and Miramax. Trancas? However you say that. The game's announcement mentions a partnership with Compass International Pictures, which is great. This tangled web of ownership feels eerily similar to the situation that doomed Friday the 13th. With the movie rights having been reverted to producer Malik Akkad and the TV rights being snatched up by Miramax, Is the video game license completely secure? Or is there a hidden legal landmine just waiting to go off and stop development in its tracks? Second, and more importantly, there's the ghost of abandoned support. Gun justified ending Texas Chainsaw Massacre by saying their creative vision was complete. What's to stop them from saying the same thing about Halloween 18 months after it comes out? The offline bots are a good enough sign, ensuring the game won't be a digital table coaster if the servers get shut down, but that feature doesn't guarantee the long-term support, with new content and patches that a live service game needs to thrive. The community's trust has been broken twice. Players are understandably nervous about investing time and money into another Gun Interactive title, afraid it'll just be left for dead like the last one. Another major concern is the game's scope. Unlike games that draw from a massive pool of horror icons, Halloween is tied to a single franchise. How much content can realistically be pulled from this one well? While the series has 13 films, there are only so many different variations of Haddonfield, so many distinct looks for Michael, and so many survivors you can introduce before it starts to feel repetitive. This raises the alarming possibility that the game is destined for a shorter lifespan. After all, a limited content pool makes it far easier to declare the project is fully realized and walk away, echoing the exact justification used for abandoning the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It feeds the fear that this might just be another pump and dump title designed to burn bright and fast rather than a game built to last years. Gun Interactive is standing at a bit of a juncture. They are masters of adapting horror, with a proven talent for making games that are authentic and very fun. Halloween has the potential to be their defining work, a project that combines everything they've learned. Partnering with IllFonic again is a return to the roots, and getting people like John Carpenter involved shows a real commitment to getting it right. But they're also haunted by their own history. The ghost of Friday the 13th is a stark reminder of how fragile these licensed games are. And the ghost of Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a much more personal demon, a self-inflicted wound that has bred deep distrust in the horror community. It shows a pattern of cutting and running that's hard to ignore. So, can Halloween survive? The single-player and offline modes offer a glimmer of hope, a safety net that their other games never had. For this game to truly succeed and have the long life its predecessors were denied, Gun needs more than just a good launch. They need to prove they've actually learned from their fatal mistakes. They need to show the community that this time they're in it for the long haul. This is about much more than just making another great horror game. It's about rebuilding trust and finally giving one of their creations the chance to live a full life, instead of becoming just another ghost in their graveyard. But what do you think? Is Halloween destined to repeat the mistakes of the past, or will this be the game that finally breaks the curse? Let me know your hopes and fears for the Halloween game down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this little investigation, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into gaming in general, honestly. As always, thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed, and I might see you in Haddonfield. It perfectly replicated the feel of the films, where teamwork could lead to a dramatic, dynamic, and promising an asymmetrical horror sandbox on anime. But what can we expect? But what can we blah blah blah. This time they're in it for the long haul. Fucking press X to doubt, Jesus. I'm just kidding. I'm hoping they could do better.